morning, teachers. How you doing?
Good morning.
Cold, I know, I'm sorry. I know. But you know what? I just want to first of all thank you for all the good work that you've been doing. Heard about those Dibble scores. Our students are really making progress. Yes, yes. All of your hard work is really, really paying off. Today in grade group meeting, we're going to look at some student data. We're going to look at some school data. And we're going to start planning our next steps. And along with looking at some things to help meet the needs of students, we're also going to look at some techniques and strategies that are going to help them meet the needs of teachers as well. John Maxwell said it best. He said, the best way to keep from becoming satisfied with current achievements is to make yourself a continual learner. You must keep improving yourself, not only acquiring knowledge to replace what you forgot or what's out of date, but building on what you've learned in the past. So John Maxwell had it right. And as teachers, we are lifelong learners, and that's what we are encouraging our students to become. So in our grade group meeting today, we're going to look at some things that are going to meet student needs, and we're also going to look at some things that are going to improve our instructional delivery as teachers. So is that okay?
That's right.
All right. So we're going to look at our agenda today. Our school focus is what we're going to discuss first, and we're going to talk about Berman's need, our school need. We're going to look at some test scores from last year, 2007 test scores. We're also going to compare that to the LEAP and I-LEAP assessment guide, our state assessment guide. We're going to look a little bit, just briefly, at research and best practices and see some student trends within our building at Berman. We're going to, based on this data, we're going to look at an instructional model that we want to start. I did a class study with Ms. Mason that I'd really like to share with you. And I think it's going to be effective in your classroom to share some of the things that we did in her classroom. So that's our class study. And the strategy that we're going to look at today is the constructive response strategy. We're going to do some planning so that when you leave this meeting today, you're going to have a lesson in your hot little hands. You can go back and implement it in your classroom. So I think that will really be effective. We're going to see exactly how we're going to implement that lesson and think ahead of what we need to do to make sure that all of our children achieve success. So that's kind of what we plan on doing today. But now I'm going to step out a little bit and do an extension and an expansion. I just talked about an agenda. How is an agenda beneficial in your classroom? What are some ways that an agenda can make your instruction more effective?
Well, for one thing, it can keep you on task.
Oh, yes.
And then the other thing is the kids know what's coming up. And they get excited about that.
Exactly.
And if I were a kid in the classroom, you know, most children are going to look at it and say, okay, we covered this, we covered this. It's almost lunchtime. Because that's what they're going to be looking at. You know, how soon can we get through this?
Right. So in your classrooms, an agenda is a really good teaching tool that you can use to help provide not only the things that you've said. Ms. Stevenson said that it keeps the children on track, keeps us on track, because we can get sidetracked. But also think about at the end of a lesson when you finished and you asked the children to think about what is it that we've done that day. I have been in your classrooms. You all packed so much instruction in a short period of time that the kids don't even realize how many things that they've done and how many different ways that they've touched an objective. So an agenda can help them remember what they have done during that class period.
And also for anyone that is coming in to visit the classroom, or if you have a principal or anyone that comes into your classroom, they can automatically look at that agenda and know where you've been and know where you're going, even if they come in the middle of the lesson. So it's also helping that way.
So when you check your emails, when you get back to your classrooms, I've emailed just a very generic agenda to you so that you can use it over and over to make it very teacher friendly. Because you don't have time to do this every day all the time. So check your email when you get back to class. All right. We're going to talk right now about some data. And I'm going to turn you over to the very capable hands of Mr. Young. And he's going to talk to you about the data. All right.
Yes, we have to look at data in order to know what our need is. because everything that we do needs to be data driven. It needs to go back to data. Otherwise, we're just pulling out the wind, trying to figure out what we're going to do. Or we may be looking at our students, and Ms. Manchesky may say, well, my students need this skill. Ms. Thompson may say, my students need a different skill. But what we want to do is we want to look at the whole school and see what the needs of the students are in our entire school. And based on that, we look at data from last year's LEAP and iLEAP test scores to determine, or to help to determine where we should go in terms of focus. We want to narrow our focus. And we also want to see where we could get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of increasing our test scores. So if you look here, I have a chart for each grade level with their test scores and their data results. And as we go through it, this is a 4th grade LEAP score from 2006 spring and 2007. Okay. And if you notice in 2007, in that, mine is color coded because it's from me. You can kind of look at your black and white copy. Just follow my finger. If you look at the spring 2007, you see that second bar is the green bar, and that is writing. And you see that that's our weakest area in 4th grade. And as well, on the next page, we have 5th grade. Now, if you look here on that second bar, yeah, you might have to turn 2 pages to get the 5th grade. Yeah, that's iLEAP. Now you see here, the lowest bar we have reading comprehension, rate, and respond. That's the lowest there, but writing is not that far off. That's 47%. So you have to couple that with what you looked at for 4th grade. We're going to look at an average is what we're looking at. So someone might look at 5th grade and say, oh, well, read and respond is the area we should go with. But we have to keep going with our data.
And Mr. Young, may I interrupt and just throw in some data quickly, because we're talking about reading, respond, and then we're looking at the writing as well. But I want to share with you some data from some research, actually, from Tierney and Shanahan in 1991. And their research suggests that giving students the opportunity to write in conjunction with reading fosters more critical thinking and comprehension skills. And not only did Tierney and Shanahan find that to be so in 1991, but McCrindle and Christenen in 1995 found the same research. So it was duplicated in both areas. So when we work with writing in conjunction with reading, it actually causes reading scores to improve. Just want to throw that in.
Now she's quoted all the researchers, but that really came from me. I'm just giving them the credit, but that's my stuff. Okay, but let's get back to this. So as I was saying, and as Ms. Alexander said, they do go hand in hand. But if we want to narrow our focus, is the thing that we're looking at. So then when we go to 6th grade, which again is iLEAP, that green section, you see that again, writing is our lowest area. Okay? And it just goes on and on with 7th grade as well, which we're at 51%. We have something that is a little lower, but when we look at the average of all of those grade levels, those test grade levels, we see that writing is the area where we need the most improvement. And now as 1st and 2nd grade teachers, some might say, well, how does that impact us? We're not a testing grade. Of course, your children at some point will have to face the test. And if they, next year for 2nd grade teachers. So if they have that foundation built in lower grade, it makes it that much easier when they get to a testing grade, and it also makes it that much easier for the teachers to take those students and just go with it. Yeah. And in addition to looking at the standardized test data, we always want to go to our Bible, called the assessment guide. The state assessment guide, because once you have looked at the data from previous years or past years, now we want to know, okay, what do the children need to know to prepare? And that's where the assessment guide comes in. After looking through the assessment guide, and I'm not going to go through all of these sheets, but I pull these things from the assessment guide so that we know what's going to be tested. And at going through here, almost every area pointed out constructive response. And so that's going to help us with writing. If we're looking at something where we're going to get the biggest bang, we want to look at something that's going to cross content areas. And constructive response does that. It has constructive response, of course, in the ELA section. It has it in the math section. It has it in the science and social studies section. And so that just made sense to me. If we're going to focus on writing, let's focus on something where we can get the most in all those areas. Okay? So that is the reason why, that is what led us to saying that our need at Berman is going to be critical thinking in the area of writing.